Her father mysteriously disappeared 15 years ago. She found the lonely mountain man who had been guarding his grave all along, waiting to deliver one final letter that changed everything. Subscribe to Wild Sky Stories' new emotional tales every day. The first day, Willa May Harper climbed the narrow path to the ridge overlooking Thunder Valley. She carried nothing but a small basket of bread and a heart full of questions. She found the flat rock near the old pine tree, the one her grandmother had described so many times before she passed. She sat down, pulled her wool shawl tighter against the autumn wind, and stared at the cabin in the distance. It was barely a cabin, truth be told, more like a collection of logs and prayers held together by stubbornness and mountain will. Smoke curled from the crooked chimney, proof that someone lived there despite everything folks in town said about that place being cursed. Willa May did not believe in curses. She believed in answers, and she had traveled 400 miles from Missouri to find them. The mountain man never showed himself that first day. She caught glimpses of movement behind the clouded window glass, saw the shadow pass across the doorway twice, but he never stepped outside. And she never called out to him. She simply sat there until the sun began its descent behind the purple peaks. Then, she gathered her basket and walked back down to the town of Copper Ridge, where she had rented a small room above the general store. The second day, Willa May brought her basket again, this time filled with apples from the merchant's wife who had taken a liking to her. She climbed the same path, found the same rock, and settled herself upon it like she was keeping an appointment with God himself. The cabin door opened once around midday. She saw boots, worn and dusty, pause at the threshold. She saw large hands grip the doorframe. Then the door closed again, and she was alone with the wind and her thoughts. She did not feel discouraged. She had not expected this to be easy. When evening came, she left 2 apples on the rock before departing. A small offering, a gesture of peace. The third day arrived with clouds that threatened rain, but never delivered on their promise. Willa May climbed the path with her shawl and her basket, which now contained a small loaf of bread she had baked herself in the kitchen behind the general store. The apples were gone from the rock. In their place sat a single carved wooden flower, petals delicate as real ones, crafted with hands that understood beauty even in isolation. Willa May held the wooden flower for a long time, turning it over in her fingers, feeling the smooth places where a knife had worked with patience and care. She placed it gently in her basket and took her seat upon the rock. Today the mountain man stood at his window. She could see his silhouette clearly, a tall figure with broad shoulders and hair that hung past his collar. He stood there for nearly an hour, watching her watch him, neither of them moving, neither of them speaking. Then he turned away, and she saw him no more that day. She left the bread on the rock when evening came. The fourth day brought sunshine so bright it hurt her eyes. Willa May wore her blue dress, the one her mother had made before the fever took her, and she braided her chestnut hair with a ribbon that matched. She did not know why she took such care with her appearance. She told herself it was simply because the weather was fine, and fine weather deserved acknowledgement. The bread was gone from the rock. In its place sat a small bowl carved from dark wood, filled with wild blackberries, so fresh their juice still glistened in the morning light. Willa May smiled for the first time since arriving in Copper Ridge. She ate the berries slowly, savoring each one, looking toward the cabin where the mountain man worked outside today. He chopped wood with powerful strokes, his back turned to her. But she knew he was aware of her presence. The way his shoulders tensed, the way he paused between each swing just long enough to listen. He never turned around. She left a letter on the rock that evening, weighted down with a small stone. In it she wrote only her name, and the words, "I come in peace, seeking truth. I will return tomorrow." The fifth day dawned with frost on the ground and gold in the trees. Willa May pulled on her warmest dress and her heaviest shawl, packed her basket with bread and cheese, and 2 small jars of honey she had purchased from a farmer passing through town. She climbed the path, with her heart beating strangely in her chest. Something felt different today. The air itself seemed to hold its breath, waiting for what would unfold. The rock was empty when she arrived, the letter gone. She sat down and arranged her shawl around her shoulders, settling in for another day of silent vigil. An hour passed, then another. Then the cabin door opened fully, and the mountain man stepped outside. He was taller than she had imagined, well over 6 feet, with shoulders like the mountains themselves. His beard was dark and full, streaked with early gray, despite the fact that he could not have been more than 35 years old. His eyes were the color of winter storms, pale gray, and deep with something she could not name. He walked toward her slowly, each step deliberate, like a man approaching a wild creature he feared might startle and run. Willa May did not run. She sat very still on her rock and watched him come. He stopped 10 feet away from her, his hands hanging at his sides, those remarkable storm-colored eyes fixed upon her face. "You have his eyes," he said. His voice was rough from disuse, like rust on an old hinge, but beneath the rust was music, warmth, sorrow. Willa May felt her breath catch. Whose eyes? The mountain man was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "I reckon you better come inside, Miss Harper. There are things you need to know, and they deserve to be told proper, with walls around them, and warmth in the air." She rose from the rock on unsteady legs. "How do you know my name?" "I read your letter." "That is not what I meant." He looked at her with those storm cloud eyes, and she saw pain there, vast and old. "I know. Come inside, and I will tell you everything." It is time. His name was Ezekiel Holt, and he made her tea from herbs he gathered himself on the mountain. His cabin was sparse but clean, with a fire crackling cheerfully in the stone hearth, and wooden carvings covering every available surface. Birds and flowers and horses and wolves, all created with the same careful hands that had made the flower he left for her on the rock. Willa May sat in a chair by the fire, her hands wrapped around a warm cup, and watched Ezekiel settle himself across from her. He moved like a man carrying heavy weight, though his body showed no burden. "You came here looking for answers about your father," he said. It was not a question. "Yes, Thomas Harper. He left Missouri 15 years ago, heading west with a group of settlers. His letters stopped coming after they reached Colorado territory. My grandmother spent years trying to learn what happened to him. She died last spring, still not knowing. I know what happened to him." Willa May's cup trembled in her hands. "Tell me, please." Ezekiel looked into the fire for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was low and careful, like a man handling something precious and breakable. 15 years ago, I was 17 years old, foolish and proud and certain I knew everything worth knowing. I had quarreled with my family back in Virginia, said terrible things I did not mean, and set off alone to make my fortune in the gold fields. He paused, and Willa May saw his jaw tighten with old pain. I had no business being on that mountain in November. No supplies to speak of, no proper clothes, no understanding of how quickly weather can turn deadly in these parts. The blizzard caught me halfway up the north face. I walked until I could not walk anymore. Then I crawled, and then I lay down in the snow to die. Willa May's heart was pounding now. She leaned forward without realizing it. Your father found me there. Thomas Harper, with his kind eyes and his warm coat, and his stubborn refusal to let a foolish boy die alone in the snow. Tears were forming in Willa May's eyes, though she did not notice them. He carried me to a cave he knew about, a shelter where the wind could not reach. He gave me his coat, his blankets, his food. He kept me alive through 3 days of the worst storm I have ever witnessed, before or since. And then, Willa May whispered. Ezekiel's storm cloud eyes met hers, and she saw the tears he was fighting. On the 4th day, the storm broke. I was weak, but living. Your father was sick with the cold he had caught keeping me warm. He could not make the journey down the mountain, and I could not carry him. He made me promise to go for help. Did you? I tried. God in heaven knows I tried, but the snow was too deep, and I was too weak, and by the time I finally reached the settlement and brought men back up that mountain, he stopped, unable to continue. Willa May set down her cup with shaking hands. He was gone. Ezekiel nodded slowly. He was gone. Peaceful, they said, like he had simply fallen asleep and let the cold take him. There was a letter in his pocket, addressed to his family in Missouri. I have kept it safe for 15 years, waiting. He rose and walked to a wooden chest in the corner of the cabin. From within it, he drew a leather pouch, yellowed with age, but carefully preserved. He brought it to Willa May and placed it gently in her hands. He wrote this in the cave while he was keeping watch over me. I think he knew even then that he would not survive, but he wanted his family to know why he made the choice he made. Willa May's hands trembled as she opened the pouch and drew out the folded paper within. The handwriting was her father's. She would have recognized it anywhere, and the tears fell freely now as she began to read. The letter spoke of love. Love for his mother back in Missouri. Love for his little daughter Willa May, who had been only 5 years old when he left. Love for the wife he had lost to fever 2 years before his departure. It spoke of regret for leaving, but not regret for the journey itself, for the mountains had shown him the glory of creation in ways he had never imagined. And it spoke of the boy, the foolish, proud boy who reminded Thomas Harper of himself at that age, the boy who deserved a chance to grow into a man, to learn from his mistakes, to find his way back home to the family he had wounded with his angry words. I could not let him die, Thomas had written. I could not watch another mother lose her son when I had the power to prevent it. If this is my final act upon this earth, let it be an act of mercy. Tell Willa May that her father loved her more than breath itself. Tell her to live boldly and love deeply and never let fear steal her joy. And tell her that if she ever finds this boy grown into a man, she should thank him for me. Thank him for giving my death meaning. Thank him for being worth saving. Willa May looked up from the letter, tears streaming down her face. Ezekiel was weeping too, silent tears that carved paths through his weathered cheeks. I stayed on this mountain, he said, softly. I built this cabin near the place where I buried him, proper and deep, with a stone marker and prayers over his grave. I could not go home, not after what I had cost your family. I could not face my own family either, not with this guilt upon my shoulders. So I stayed and I tended his grave and I waited. Waited for what? For you. For someone from his family to come looking. I always knew someone would, eventually. A man like Thomas Harper does not simply vanish without someone coming to find the truth. He drew a shaky breath. I have been waiting 15 years to tell you that your father was the finest man I ever knew, and his sacrifice made me into someone worth saving. Everything good I am, everything decent and true, I owe to him. Willa May rose from her chair. She crossed the space between them and stood before this man who had carried her father's memory for so long, who had spent 15 years in self-imposed exile, guarding a grave and waiting for absolution that might never come. "My father would not want you to spend your life in guilt," she said gently. "He saved you so you could live, not so you could hide yourself away on a mountain, punishing yourself for surviving." "I know that now," Ezekiel whispered. "I think I have known it for a long time, but I could not leave. Not until I had given this letter to his family. Not until I had made certain someone knew the truth about Thomas Harper and his final act of grace. Now, someone knows. Yes, now someone knows." Willa May reached out and took his hand. It was warm and rough and trembling slightly. "Will you show me his grave? I should like to visit my father." Ezekiel nodded, unable to speak. They walked together to the quiet clearing where Thomas Harper rested beneath a simple stone marker. The autumn leaves had carpeted the ground in gold and crimson, and the mountain stood tall, and proud above them, witness to the sacrifice that had been made here so many years ago. Willa May knelt beside her father's grave and wept. She wept for the years lost, for the grandmother who had died without knowing, for the little girl who had waited so long for her father to come home. But mixed with the grief was something else. Peace, understanding, gratitude. Ezekiel stood behind her, silent and respectful, giving her the space she needed to grieve. When she finally rose, her tears were drying on her cheeks, and something new was growing in her heart. "I am not leaving Copper Ridge," she said. Ezekiel looked at her with surprise. "You are not?" "No. I came here seeking answers, and I found them. But I also found something else." She looked at the cabin in the distance, at the mountain rising above it, at the man standing before her with his storm cloud eyes and his gentle hands. "I found the place where my father's spirit lives on. I should like to stay near it, if I may. You may stay as long as you wish. And you, will you finally allow yourself to live? Ezekiel Holt, will you come down from this mountain and join the world again?" He was quiet for a long moment, looking at her with an expression she could not quite read. "Perhaps," he finally said, "if I had a reason to." Willa May smiled through her tears. "Then let us find you a reason, together." The seasons turned on Thunder Mountain. Autumn gave way to winter, and winter surrendered to spring. Willa May remained in Copper Ridge, and Ezekiel began making the journey down to town, slowly at first. Then, with growing confidence, he brought his carvings to the general store, where they sold faster than he could make them. He helped rebuild a barn that had been damaged in a storm. He attended church for the first time in 15 years, and wept through the entire service. And every evening, no matter the weather, he and Willa May would walk to the flat rock overlooking the valley, where they had first begun their silent conversation, and they would sit together and watch the sun set behind the mountains her father had loved. On a spring evening, exactly 1 year after Willa May had first climbed that path, Ezekiel took her hands in his and spoke words he had been carrying in his heart for months. "Your father saved my life so I could live. For 15 years, I did not understand what that meant. I thought living meant surviving, existing, drawing breath. But you have taught me that living means loving. It means opening your heart even when you are afraid. It means choosing hope over guilt, future over past." Willa May squeezed his hands. "What are you saying?" "I am saying that I love you, Willa May Harper. I love your courage and your kindness and your stubborn refusal to give up on anything or anyone. I love the way you have honored your father's memory by extending grace to the man responsible for his death. You were not responsible for his death. He made a choice, freely and out of love. I know that now. You have taught me that too. He drew a shaky breath. I want to spend the rest of my life being worthy of his sacrifice and your love. If you will have me. Willamette looked at this man, who had been broken by guilt and healed by grace, who had guarded her father's grave and kept his letter safe, who had waited 15 years for a chance at redemption. Yes, she said simply. I will have you. They were married in the little church in Copper Ridge, on a summer day when the wildflowers bloomed across the mountainside. After the ceremony, they walked together to Thomas Harper's grave and laid their wedding flowers upon the stone. Thank you, Papa, Willamette whispered. Thank you for saving him for me. The mountain wind carried her words upward, toward the peaks her father had loved, toward the heaven where she knew he was watching. And in that moment, Willamette understood the truth her father had known all along. Love is never wasted. Sacrifice is never meaningless. And sometimes the greatest gift we can give is the chance for someone else to become the person they were always meant to be. Thomas Harper had given that gift to a foolish boy on a frozen mountain, and that boy, grown now into a man of depth and grace, had given that same gift to the daughter who had come seeking answers, and found instead a future she had never dared to imagine. The mountain man had finally spoken, and his words had changed everything.